Alright guys, today is an episode of The Best of the Rest, basically just covering some of the football over the weekend in the Premier League. So we'll start off with Manchester City versus Brentford, and this was a game which I expected to be fairly straightforward. I thought Man City would just roll Brentford over quite easily, as Brentford are a side who get a lot of praise when they're doing well, but sometimes I think because they're new to the leagues still fairly, and people like to see new teams do well, and I just think sometimes when they go under a loss of form, it sometimes goes a bit unnoticed. But they were brilliant. They had so many opportunities early on. They probably should have scored more than two, but despite them being really good, I also thought City were quite sluggish to start the game, and throughout the game, to be honest, it was a really poor performance by their standards. And they had opportunities before they did take the lead. Onyeka had a good chance, and there were plenty of opportunities. Ivan Toney got the opener though from a free kick. Ben Mee headed it on, and Ben Mee, by the way, got to be one of the signings of the summer for Brentford. Free transfer from Burnley, and yeah, he's just been brilliant for Brentford. A really good defender, and has done quite a lot for Brentford in the attacking area as well, in terms of getting his head on things in the box, scoring goals. He scored against both Manchester clubs this season. I think he also scored a couple of weeks ago as well. I can't remember who it was against though. But he has chipped in at both ends 100%, and has got to be one of the signings of the season. And Ivan Toney did well to just beat John Stones to the header. And yeah, Ivan Toney's obviously going to be disappointed about not being in the England squad. Watch my video that comes out tomorrow if you want to find out whether he does get into it. Spoiler, he does for me. I think he's a brilliant footballer. And yeah, City, they started to get a bit of control once the goal went in. They had a lot of penalty shouts, probably about 5. I don't think any of them were penalties. The only one which I thought was actually a foul was the handball by Rico Henry, but even then I think it was just outside the box, which is what the referee gave. I thought overall the referee, I think it was Peter Banks, had a fairly solid game, to be honest. He got most things right, I thought. And yeah, the one thing that didn't help City that Brentford did really well is they got bodies back in numbers. They obviously played their 5-3-2, 3-5-2, whatever you want to call it, formation. And yeah, we'd most of the game have the 3 centre-backs back, the 3 midfielders back, and both wing-backs. So effectively 8 players within the final, their defensive third. So it didn't give City much space to knock the ball about. And City were showing signs of frustration in the first half, taking a lot of long shots, which is uncharacteristic of them. And one of them did go in from Phil Foden, granted, but yeah, it wasn't a sign of City being in control of the game, and that was one hell of a strike by Foden, by the way, though. And yeah, Brentford did have a few really good performers. One of them for me, Rico Henry, constant energy at left back, driving forward with the ball, causing all sorts of problems. The only dodgy moment he did have was when he gave the ball away, and then nearly gave a penalty away with the handball. But like I said, I think it was just outside the penalty area. And yeah, Laporte, he got a nasty gash, but did make a really important clearance in the second half. Which City did dominate early on, actually, second half. They didn't create that many out-and-out chances, though. Haaland wasn't getting any service whatsoever, I didn't think. Most of their defenders, I think, had more shots than Haaland. But yeah, that just shows how well Brentford dealt with him, to be completely honest. And yeah, City even tried a formation change, bringing Alvarez on for Cancelo, and yeah, it just didn't work for them at all. Brentford, they got their winner on the counter-attack, could have had one after it. It was a really good counter-attack from De Silva, and Ivan Toney tucking it away. Johan Visser as well did it really well to drive forward with the ball, get it past De Bruyne too. And yeah, brilliant team performance from Brentford. Is the point of this. All 3 centre-backs I thought was superb. And then in the Saturday tea time kickoff, Newcastle beat Chelsea in a not so entertaining game. It was a tough watch the first 45 minutes. It was quite stop-starty. It never really got going. And yeah, part of that was just down to like a couple of injuries right at the start of the game to Fabian Schär and Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Ruben Loftus-Cheek unfortunately had to be subbed off, and I mean he just can't catch a break with injuries, can he? Any time it seems to be going well for him in a Chelsea shirt, he picks up an injury, and that's him out for a few weeks or months. And by the time he's over the injury, he has to get work his way back into the squad, which is no easy feat. So I feel for him a little bit. And yeah, Newcastle put a lot of pressure on in the first half, but Chelsea dealt with it quite well. I thought they were mostly playing on the counter attack, and yeah, Newcastle, despite the possession they just couldn't create many chances. Almiron had a volley which wasn't too far away. I mean, if he wasn't in the form he was in, I doubt he would have even attempted the volley. To be completely honest, it would have been some goal, and I mean he has scored a few wonder goals already this season, so you wouldn't put it past him. But yeah, first half it was a very forgettable game, to be completely honest, not one that's going to live long in the memory. But then second half, Newcastle they continued with the high tempo, and yeah, they upped it a little bit more. I think you could argue they went all out, and yeah, and also what they were doing in the second half was I thought their final ball was a little bit better, and then around the 60th minute, the game seemed to go Chelsea's way a little bit. They were starting to get a bit of the ball in attacking areas for the first time in the game, because there was no attacking intent really, bar a few counter attacks in the first half. And they got a shot off. Nick Pope managed to save it, a good Conor Gallagher attempt. And Newcastle literally almost just went up the other end of the pitch. Joe Linton flicks it to Almiron. Almiron goes on a good dribble, knocks it into the path of Joe Willock, and a brilliant strike from Joe Willock. And yeah, it felt like in the first half, Newcastle were really struggling to get the final ball, and they were a little bit wasteful. Second half, that was less the case. Even though they arguably had less of the ball in good positions, they still made more of them once they were in that position, I felt personally. And I think that there was also a case in the first half you could argue that Newcastle could have had a penalty. But for me, Chalobah, what on earth is he meant to do in that position? It wouldn't surprise me if, because of the rules, that a penalty was given. But anyone who's ever played football knows that you've got to put your arm in that position, otherwise you're at risk of hurting yourself, if anything, when you slide in like that. So yeah, for me, not a penalty. I think the referee got it right, and I think the referee, we have seen over the past couple of weeks there have been less mistakes in terms of the refereeing, I think, which is obviously very good. We'll see if that continues after the World Cup break in the Premier League. But yeah, I'm just looking at my notes here. I think also part of the problem for Chelsea is because they never really got going this game, that there was 5-minute periods here and there, but not many of them. The problem they've got, I believe, is that Graham Potter wants them to play in sort of different systems in different games. With top clubs like Chelsea, who I'm not saying Brighton aren't, but I mean clubs who have been consistently fighting for European spots for the last 10 years or so, they want to play the same style of football week in, week out, and Potter's trying to do this thing that he did with Brighton, where it's he wants players to be able to play multiple positions based on who they're playing against and how the flow of the game's going. But Chelsea's players just aren't as tactically diverse, I don't think, as Brighton's, because if you look at Chelsea's players, not all of them can play 3 or 4 different positions. Some of them are very restricted to what position on the pitch they can play. And yeah, it boiled over a bit at the end of the game, but yeah, massive result for Newcastle overall. And then in the late kick-off on Saturday, Arsenal managed to win 2-0 away at Wolves at the Molineux Stadium. And yeah, it wasn't the greatest performance ever from Arsenal, I didn't think. I thought first half, like Wolves probably had the better of the chances. And Arsenal, it was quite an average start to the game, and I think that's been the case in a few of their games recently. Like, they haven't started the best, but second half, different team completely, and that's a really good sign for Arsenal, the fact that they didn't let their heads drop. But we'll go through the game. Xhaka came off after about 2 minutes, which is a real shame to see, seeing how he, in my opinion, has been one of the 3 best midfielders in the league this season. And going into the World Cup, you hope he be available for Switzerland to play. But yeah, it's not good to see. Wolves, they looked threatening on the counter-attack, to be fair. And Wolves, I know recently, have been poor in goal-scoring form and not great defensively either. But they were looking like a threat on the counter-attack, and probably should have had a penalty in the first half. In fact, forget probably, should have. And arguably a Saliba red card as well, because it was an offside given for it. Gets played across, and Saliba does foul him, and it is last man. So VAR should have overturned the offside and given the penalty, in my opinion. And then Arsenal really would have struggled. Wolves probably would have had a 1-goal lead, and then it's a different game. But that is football, if buts and maybes. But yeah, Wolves, I thought, were slightly hard done by there. There were also another couple of occasions where they did get forward in the first half and cause problems. But yeah, they did frustrate Arsenal in the first half, who really struggled for rhythm, is the point of view that I saw. And Jesus, most of Arsenal's chances fell to him in the first half, and he was getting in some good positions, but he just doesn't look very confident in front of goal. He still played well, but just in front of goal, he doesn't. You never back him to score, I don't think. And yeah, just looking at my notes once again. Hugo Bueno, I thought, was a good addition to Wolves' team recently. Very good at like just winning the ball and using his energy, getting up and down on the left of the pitch. And yeah, for the opening goal for Arsenal after half time, Arsenal started to get on top. It was a brilliant move. Jesus picked out Vieira, who I thought has another really good game. Whenever I've seen Vieira play, and it hasn't been much because in the league, Xhaka, Partey and Odegaard have worked really well as a midfield 3, but whenever he has had to come in, like the Brentford game, he has done really well. And really good assist for Odegaard in this game. Just brilliant team goal. And yeah, also I think even though Wolves' second half were not as threatening, I thought that when they did get forward, they didn't make the Arsenal defence look amazing. In fact, it was the first time I thought Saliba had a game where he looked like possibly Arsenal's dodgiest defender, because he's been amazing, like the best centre-back in the league so far this season, William Saliba. But I think that Saturday's game was arguably one of his worst performances of the season, and that's saying something because it still wasn't a horrendous performance. It was just, a not great performance in my opinion. But yeah, the second goal from Arsenal, it was just like forced into the back of the net through the amount of pressure. It came from the substitute Lembikisa on the right, not really getting rid of the ball, letting Martinelli get it, and yeah, from then on it was just forced in almost. There were a couple of blocks and saves, but it came to Odegaard, and he made no mistake of getting his second goal of the game, and he's a player in brilliant form right now. But what I'd like to see from Wolves going forward is change the system, 4-3-3, midfield 3 of Boubakar Traoré, Neves and Mateus Nunes, because he didn't look too bad when he came on. And then front 3 of Traoré, Guedes and Podence, because even Podence when he came on made a bit of a difference. And yeah, Wolves need to change something when Lopetegui comes in, otherwise they're going to be in big trouble. But anyway, yeah, massive win again for Arsenal. And then in the early kick-off in Sunday's game, Aston Villa beat Brighton at 2-1 to continue Unai Emery's winning start at Aston Villa in the league. And it was a poor start from Villa, brilliant start for Brighton. They were putting them under pressure, won the ball back through McAllister on Douglas Luiz. More on that midfield battle later on. And McAllister, with his first touch of the game, managed to score. Poor first touch from Douglas Luiz, brilliant from McAllister. Well taken goal. But Aston Villa responded really well because it was like 48 seconds, I think, that goal was scored at. So that they didn't, let their heads drop. But in terms of the goal, I think part of the problem was that Brighton blocked all of Emiliano Martinez's options to play the ball, but Douglas Luiz, he's the only one who's really free, but he doesn't come towards Martinez for the ball. He lets the ball come to him, and whenever you do that, you're just waiting for someone to come up behind you, and that's what McAllister did. And Lallana, he was key for all of 5 minutes. He did play his part in the goal. Unfortunately got injured, and story of Adam Lallana's career, sadly, over the past few years. But Villa responded well. They got a penalty, brilliant run from McGinn, good ball by Buendia as well. Lewis Dunk, it was a bit of a desperate challenge. There's not really a lot he could have done in that situation, in all honesty. And Danny Ings, he scored the penalty. It was an interesting tactical battle, in terms of what formations were played. Brighton went for a 4-4-2 there to change it up when Lallana went off early on and bring Enciso on, who's another forward. And it just didn't suit Brighton at all. They needed that player playing in the number 10 role, I thought. So that's why I think they got picked apart a little bit in midfield by Villa at times, playing the 4-2-3-1 formation with quite a narrow 4-2-3-1, but that sort of gave Matty Cash and Lucas Digne the space to get forward into. So that it was an interesting battle, but it's one that you expect Villa to win given the two shapes of the team. And Brighton, that lack of number 10, it did cause them to lose the momentum in the first half. Second half, though, early on, Trossard scored one of the best disallowed goals you're going to see all season. He does give Matty Cash a nudge, which was a foul. Turns around 30 yards out, just belts it in off the bar, bounces, hits the roof of the net. That's what we call a Tony Yeboah. But for the Villa winner from Danny Ings, or if it was Danny Ings' goal, I think it probably just about was. It was good play from Matty Cash, and Buendia unlucky not to score a really good diving header. And then Brighton, they managed to win the ball back, and they just, I don't know, they spent they almost too relaxed on it. And the same thing happened with the first goal, the Brighton goal. McAllister, the ball shouldn't have been played to him in all fairness by Pascal Gross. I think Pascal Gross should have just hoofed it upfield. But once it did come to McAllister, once again he took a poor first touch, and this time Douglas Luiz managed to pounce on him, just as McAllister did to Luiz in the first half. Win the ball back. Danny Ings cuts on the outside, actually, gets a shot off and deflects off Levi Colwill, who is a player I really like, but unfortunately went past Robert Sanchez, and that was enough to win the game for Aston Villa. Danny Ings' all-round game was absolutely brilliant for Aston Villa, just doing so much work, making so many intelligent runs and producing lots of nice flicks for players like Jacob Ramsey and Buendia as well. But Brighton should have had a penalty. Digne kicks Solly March, and he's just got a bit of penalty. Solly March gets the ball first, and no way that should not have been given a penalty. And Colwill missed a golden opportunity right at the end, which he should have scored as well. But I've just got down. Emery is a massive tactical upgrade on Steven Gerrard, it would seem, at Aston Villa, because they responded really well to going behind as well. A lot of yellow cards at the end of the game as well, that's important to know.